They came to take us at 4 in the morning. They banged on our door with the butts of their guns, shouting, "Open the door, open the door." Then we were told to gather our things because they were taking us to another region in Russia, to a different place. So they gave us half an hour, maybe, so we can take some basic things with us. What we could take in such a short time. Clothing, mostly food. Anything we could put our hands on. We bundled up or put into a trunk. They took us to the railroad station and put us into a freight car. There were 30 people in this car. They kept bringing people all day long until the entire train was full. I don't know how many people were there in the train. Anyway, the train arrived in Rovne. It arrived in Rovne. And as you know, Russian train tracks are wider than Polish tracks. So they put us into Russian freight cars. It was then that I was able to escape our transport. The soldiers who were watching us weren't paying attention to me for a moment. They turned their backs, so I went quickly toward a path, and I walked away like a regular person. I walked. I didn't run. I escaped, so I went into town to my cousins. I told them what had happened to my family. But nobody invited me to stay with them. So I went back to the train station and took a passenger train without a ticket to Zubanovo. And there I visited my other cousins. It was the same. Nobody invited me to stay. I visited everyone, and no one invited me to stay with them. So I didn't know what to do, where to go. So I walked the streets.
How old were you at the time?
14. I was 14 years old. I was born in 1925, in January. Eventually, the soldiers caught me and asked me what I was doing there. They investigated, asking me questions. So eventually, I told them. I didn't tell them that I escaped from the transport, but rather that my parents had been deported. So they took me back to the transport, to the car where my parents were. The soldiers gave me a beating and put me back inside of the car. They conveyed us for maybe a week to a town called Kotlas, next to the river Dwina, a big, wide, long river. I don't know where it begins, maybe in Sevastopol. I don't know how far it goes, big river. We were in Kotlas. It was winter time. It was a terrible winter, very cold, severe, severe cold. We didn't have the proper clothing for this kind of winter. It was very, very, very cold, very difficult conditions. So what they did was they sent army trucks and buses to transport us. But the trucks got stuck. The river Dwina. No railroad tracks ran further to the place they were taking us to. In the spring, summer, and fall, they could use the river Dwina for transportation. There were boats and ships that connected all of the places and towns on a regular basis. In the winter, the river was a road. In the winter, when it was frozen over, an ice road. They sent one of the kolkhoz workers with sleds, small sleds and a horse. So we put our things onto the sleds and walked behind them. We walked like this for 2 or 3 weeks until we reached our destination.
Where did you rest and sleep?
We slept We stopped for a night here and there in different small villages, in huts sometimes. In the huts, or in small villages where other deportees had stayed, they were already prepared for us. So that's what it was like. It was like this until we arrived at our destination. We got off of the river Dwina. There was a road, a side road next to a small river simply called Rička. Then they took us into the forest. Inside the forest were a few barracks. They brought a lot of people there. Not only the people from our transport, they somehow put different transports together. So by the time we got there, there were already a lot of other people there. All of the barracks were already very crowded. The next day, we had a day off, and then we all had to go to work in the forest. They gave us 7 ounces of bread per person per day. In the morning, they gave us some soup. And they gave us some soup when we came back after work. They gave us some soup.
How many hours did you work?
We worked 12 hours a day, from early morning until late at night.
Did your mom work?
My mom also worked. Everybody had to work. Only my sister. She was much younger. So she went to school. They organized a kind of a school for young children. They went to school. The conditions were very, very difficult. Soon, a lot of people were dying from different diseases. They had infections all over their bodies. They lost all of their teeth. They were losing their teeth. People went. I don't know the exact name of it, but they went blind from total lack of vitamins. There weren't any doctors or medicine. No health care at all. Once a week we could use, they had something like a sauna where you could wash. It was heated by steam. Once a week we could go there and wash ourselves. There was no place to do the laundry or to clean clothing. The river was frozen. There were only a few holes from which we could draw out river water to drink. So people were dying. A lot of them. Nobody. Women who were expecting children, they all miscarried. Not a single child was born there. Anyway, the conditions we had to live in while we were there were terrible. Terrible. I got all of these diseases. In addition, I also got scabies. And there was no medicine there to cure it. We spent 2 years there. 2 years. So the scabies. My entire body was covered with wounds. In addition, we had lice. Head lice. Body lice. In the winter, we shook them off of our sleeves. That's how it was.